Thanks, gentlemen. Please finish the first entry of your poems and short stories by next week. You will exchange your work with your partner during that class. See y'all in 2 days. After Miss Love's announcement, a cluster of girls rushed over to Marquise. Eric felt disregarded and started walking towards the door. "Hey, Eric," Marquise called out. "Thanks for the tour." "No problem, man." Marquise managed to make his way through the crowd of girls to shake Eric's hand. It was firm, but this time slightly prolonged. Although Marquise's skin was cold, it did not stop Eric's erection from immediately returning. By chance, Eric looked down and noticed that Marquise was rock hard. Eric didn't want to let Marquise's hand go, but he had to. As Eric walked toward the elevator, he couldn't believe what had just transpired. It was almost as if he died and went to a forbidden heaven. As he opened his car door and sat in the driver's seat, his excitement changed to doubt and fear. Was Marquise really coming on to him, or did he imagine everything? Eric never entertained this type of flirtation with a guy and wasn't sure what his next move would be. He couldn't wait to tell Sean about his amazing day. And that was the coming age part, just some of the narrative. At the beginning of each chapter, there's a poem that kind of gives you a summary of the chapter. And the poem is actually Eric's writing assignment as well. I'm going to give you the poem that was at the beginning of this chapter, just so you can get a flavor for that. It's called Loneliness. I am extremely lonely. My forbidden passions make my life an abyss of isolation. My loneliness feels suffocating, as though I am constantly drowning. I did not choose this life. It chose me. Should I embrace my loneliness because I lie and say I'm a private person? Or should I run away from my retreat like the plague? Because the truth is, it is a facade which scares me. They say God works in mysterious ways. Is solitude equivalent to mystery? Or am I simply doomed to an eternity of loneliness? By Eric Peterson, Advanced Creative Writing. The next poem and excerpt, Kadisha's going to help me with this one.
So I'm going to start off with a poem that's entitled Passion. Preparing him for action, I lift him up and place him into my mouth. Carefully, I lubricate the head with my long, pink tongue, sliding it up and down his wood. His cane-flavored shaft intertwines with my saliva and fills my mouth, bringing to life the taste buds on the surface of my tongue. I grip the long, black piece with both hands for support, and I begin to blow, and blow, and blow. Chills run down my spine as he's about to climax. I press the right keys, hitting his spot, causing him to ejaculate sounds of musical passion. Sweat drips down my face, for the song has ended. I place my clarinet back onto its stand. By Eric Peterson, Advanced Creative Writing. You guys are thinking naughty thoughts, weren't you?
Yes, we will.
Not quite. Now I'm going to read another excerpt from the book. Gosh, he is so beautiful, Eric thought as he rolled a blue ink pen back and forth on the surface of his desktop. I can't possibly be his type. Anyway, he must be straight, and certainly he has a girlfriend. Remember, a week from today, you have to exchange your short story and poetry with your designated writing partners. Have a good night. See you on Monday. The pen slipped from the pressure of Eric's hand and landed on the floor. As he reached down to retrieve it, he noticed blue and red tennis shoes in front of his desk. I assume you brought your clarinet with you tonight to showcase your talent, Marquise said in his thick French accent. Eric was startled and bumped his head against his desk. Sorry, Mr. Peterson, are you okay? Ouch. Eric rubbed the spot. Yes, I'm fine. I actually meant to leave my clarinet in the car, but since you asked, I guess I can play a little something for you. On any other day, Eric wouldn't bump his head, jumble his words, or say stupid things. However, the 2 times he and Marquise occupied the same space, Eric managed to do all 3. Cool, where to? Marquise asked in anticipation, displaying his radiant white smile. Remember the practice rooms in the Music and Performance Arts building that I showed you on Monday? Yes. Some of them are usually left unlocked. As they walked to the practice room, Eric debated whether or not he should form a fast, jazzy, or a slow komodo piece. Have you decided what you're going to play? Marquise inquired as he and Eric walked into the open practice room. The small room was brightly lit and barely big enough for 2 people. A new mahogany baby grand piano and bench were pushed to the left side. A black metal stand stood to the right of the piano. Yes, I'm going to perform an old New Orleans favorite. Eric set his clarinet on top of the piano, opening the case by flipping the 2 latches. The practice room was so small, his arm casually bumped into Marquise's cold, rock-hard body several times. Eric was so nervous that he assembled his clarinet in record speed. Marquise sat on the piano bench and switched the bill of his baseball cap to the front, patiently waiting for Eric to serenade him. There was no need for sheet music. Eric had the piece memorized. He softly licked the wooden reed and then began to play. The song was lively and festive. Mardi Gras music filled the room as Eric bounced up and down and side to side while he stood and performed the song. Halfway through the song, Marquise started clapping softly, smiling at Eric with supportive eyes and tapping his foot lightly to the beat of the music. Marquise gave Eric a standing ovation. That was great, Eric. I love the second line. Thanks. You're very knowledgeable. A lot of people don't know the name of that piece. They simply call it that Mardi Gras song, Eric said, catching his breath, and now holding his clarinet in his right hand. Another hand.
So like I said earlier, the classroom assignment is that one person writes a collection of poetry. You've already heard 2 of the poems that Eric has written, which was Loneliness, and the other one was Passion, which Kadish read. But there's also the part of the class where Marquise exchanges his short story with Eric. So when Eric gets Marquise's short story, the reader reads the short story just like he's Eric. The name of the short story is A Slave's Tale. This is an excerpt from the short story. Did you say your prayers, Cher? Mama Josette asked as she tucked me in bed. Yes. Papa Honoré playfully pinched my cheek. What did you pray for tonight? I asked God to bless my family, especially Angelique, and to make us all free one day. Emmanuel, don't worry your little self about them types of things. The good Lord above will do right by us soon. Those were the last words my grandparents said to me. I was taken from my bed in the night and sent to La Nouvelle Orleans, New Orleans in French, to live with David and Sharon Devereaux. They resided in the heart of the city in the oldest neighborhood, the Rue Carré, known as the French Quarter or simply the Quarter. The French Quarter was bounded by Rampart Street to the west, Esplanade Avenue to the north, Canal Street to the south, and the mighty Mississippi River to the east. The Devereaux were a middle-class family. They lived in the front of the quarter on Esplanade Avenue, between the notorious urban and historic rural streets. Mr. David was a short and rotund man who made most of his money as a boss at a local factory. He was also extremely hateful. Mr. David, like many white men during those times, viewed slaves as cattle and cargo, whereas Sharon Devereaux was the complete opposite of her husband. She was slender, fair-skinned, and walked with a limp, a symptom of polio. Sharon was one of the first adults in the country to show signs of the disease. She was kind, patient, and very soft-spoken. After Sharon got ill, the old slave master loaned me to his cousin, Mr. David, to help around the house. I was accustomed to the cabins on the Magnolia Plantation. However, the Devereaux's home was very different. There was a recently built shotgun-style house, named so because to get from the front of the house to the back, you had to walk through the living room, the first bedroom, Sharon's study, kitchen, my bedroom, and finally the bathroom. I was restricted to going through the kitchen entrance to get to my room. Because I was so young, I was only required to do simple tasks. Clean the bathrooms, take the trash out, bring chopped wood from the shed to the kitchen for the stove, and occasionally shine Mr. Davis' shoes. Late at night, when Mr. David was either working at the factory or in a deep sleep, Sharon would take me into the shadowy confines of her study. She stuffed the keyholes with cotton, to make sure the room appeared dark, and by candlelight she taught me to read and write. Sharon used an alphabet chart with associated pictures to teach me my letters. I was a quick learner. E stands for what, Emmanuel? Elephant. That's right, good. M, mouse. A, apple. N, nest. You always got me stumped. I thought for a minute. She had faith in me. You remember this. U is for United, as in United States. I loudly exclaimed, forgetting Mrs. Davis was in the other room sleeping. Emmanuel, you have to say it using your small voice, she warned. Sorry, I apologize. It's okay, 2 more to go. E, elephant. L, lion. What does it spell, Sharon asked. E-M-A-N-U-E-L spells Emmanuel, I said. Very good. Before long, 7 years had passed and I was 15, reading novels and learning mathematics. Emmanuel, what is the answer to this problem, x plus 9 equals 18 minus 2x? Just as I was about to say 3, Mr. David broke into the office in a rage. What the hell are you doing, Sharon? The last excerpt that I'm going to read tonight deals with the vampire twist. Who changed you? I wondered if his experience was like mine. Isildur sighed loudly. He had been pacing back and forth for the last hour. He stopped and took a seat in the chair behind his desk. I didn't really want to go into much detail about that period of my life. I suppose it could help you see how much better it is for you today than it was for me. I guess I would start with Sophia. Who is she? Isildur placed his top hat on the desk and leaned against the wall as I listened to his story. She used to work for me. Once my father had gotten too old to maintain the business, it became my duty. I needed help handling the paperwork and birds, so I hired Sophia to work as my part-time assistant. She was very good with details. I guess she learned that skill from her uncle. Sophia's uncle and aunt raised her. She never told me what happened to her parents. Her uncle used to work in the King's Treasury Department until he was arrested for stealing and eventually tried, convicted, and beheaded. Wow, that was pretty harsh. Slaves were beaten on several occasions for stealing food, clothes, and other miscellaneous items, but they were never killed. Yes, I suppose it was rather uncivilized. The death of her uncle left Sophia and her aunt impoverished, so she worked for me to make ends meet. Sophia always talked about getting rich, and one day having more gold than the King of England. I'm sure that's a dream many people share. I too pondered what it would feel like to be wealthy. Well, she eventually fulfilled that dream beyond her imagination, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, one day, we were 30 minutes late delivering a dozen of pigeons to a loyal client. The stars were already twinkling in the sky. Isildur, let's go this way. It's a shortcut, Sophia suggested. My gut told me the alley she pointed to might not be safe, but because we were running so late, I ignored my reservations. To this day, that night was the scariest moment of my life. The alley reeked of urine and other foul odors. My pace was a little bit faster than normal. Just as we almost made it to the other side, something with super speed and extraordinary strength fell from one of the buildings on top of me. The impact made me fall face down onto the ground. I felt my right leg snap. Birds were flying all over the place and I could hear Sophia screaming. The memory caused Isildur to pause for a second. What happened next? Her cry diverted the thing's attention. It jumped off my back and now had Sophia pinned to a brick wall. This was my first time getting a good view of it. It looked like a man was sucking the life out of Sophia as blood gushed down her neck. I crawled over to them and attempted to pull it off her by tugging on the creature's leg. My weak effort only angered it. It looked at me. Blood was smeared all over its face and clothes. The creature's eyes were glowing bright yellow. Its fangs were long and sharp. It hopped on me, ripped my shirt off, and sunk its teeth deep into the flesh of my back. The pain was excruciating. Just as fast as the blood left my body, it was replaced with the burning sensation of acid pumping into my veins. I was about to black out from the loss of blood when I heard a group of rambunctious boys approaching. They must have scared the thing off because it quickly ran away. Did Sophia die? And that's it. I'd like to open it up for questions or comments.